Welcome to Friday Fuel. We hope you enjoyed last week's series where we talked to you about reviewing and spotlighting your activity load and then matching your activity load to your energy. This week, we're talking to you all about how you show up emotionally in times of change. And what we mean by that is fundamentally being human. But actually, when we front up and we understand our triggers and we have some handling techniques, we're actually able to show up in a more respectful manner. And that means we're able to present ourselves more professionally in our work environment. And that also gives us a really strong reputation about how we handle situations on a day-to-day basis.
I would love you to think about your day. I would love you to think about coming home, you open the front door, chaos is raining. Now I want you to think about a day where you've walked up those front stairs, you've opened the door. The day that you've just had is absolutely amazing. You feel like a rock star, you're energized, it's been a day where things have just gone well. When you open that front door, and how do you actually handle that chaotic scene? Now I want you to flip it. I want you to think about you walking up those front stairs and you've had a chaotic day. Your day, just things haven't gone quite right. You open that front door and chaos is reigning. And now, how would you handle that same situation? The thing is with emotions is our emotions will actually shape our response to things. So it's really important when we're looking at how we show up in changing times that we're fully aware of what our triggers are. And that way, with that self-awareness, we can then self-regulate. So I'd like to share with you a couple of examples. The first example is looking at our triggers. So what the best way of doing this is grabbing a piece of paper and a pen and writing down 3 columns. The first column you're going to write triggers, you're going to write positive and you're going to write negative. In the second column, you're going to write how does my body show up? What signals does it give me? And the third one is what is this costing me? So what are triggers, and what do I mean by those? So what a trigger is think of it like a light switch and think about your emotions being that if you flick on a switch, that's how quickly in an instant you can change your emotional state. And now when we are looking at positive and negative triggers, if we're looking at something positive, that is something that in an instant will make you feel more positive and energized. And so one of those things that for me, that's a positive trigger is when I take my dog to the park, I throw that ball. And when she comes running back, when I see her little bouncy face and as she's racing along towards me to bring back her ball, it just cracks me up every single time. So for me, that's a positive trigger. What it's costing me is there's no negative cost, but what it is, it's the opportunity. And the opportunity is that it's just giving me that energy gain. A negative trigger for me is when I see somebody undermine somebody else. And I just think there's absolutely no reason that somebody should undermine somebody else in a non-constructive way. Like it's no reason to be mean to someone. I think it's all about being kindness. You can have constructive conversations, but you can do it in a very kind way. So when I see someone treat someone poorly, that will wind me up. And what I notice with my body signals is that I get this kick that comes up through my stomach and I just feel like this big wave. And so that's when I know that I've been negative triggered. And what's that cost? Well, that cost could be all sorts of things. So when you're looking at what your triggers are costing you, your negative triggers, that could be your cost on your energy. It could be your cost on your time, your health, your credibility, your reputation, could be on all sorts of things. And that's why it is so important for you to go through and identify what are your negative triggers, especially in your life. What are the signals your body gives you as it's being triggered? Because then you can self-regulate. But the most important part here is also not forgetting to look at what it's costing you, because that gives you the why and the reason why you need to make these a priority in your life. So that's the first one. The second one that I would really like to look at is that quite often when we're going through these exercises and we're going through and we're practicing these things, we're not perfect. And Sarah mentioned a moment ago that we're human, and we so are, and we've got to give ourselves some credit for that. And what I would like you to do as a second proactive hack is that when you go through and you catch yourself going through and starting to be triggered is, rather than just allowing that old habit and that old pattern to actually play out, is catch yourself and actually use a bridging statement if it's something verbal. So you might say something like, oh, actually, I'll just rephrase that. Or let's just think about this in a different way. So that just means that you really own and you're very accountable for what you're doing in that present moment and not allowing old patterns to dominate. The third tip that Sarah and I would like to share with you today is around looking at a 3-step, very easy to apply method that you can bring into your everyday. What happens here is, with the steps, is you pick something that you see regularly. It could be your watch, it could be something on your screen. And what you do is, every time you see that through your day, you do a self-check. So you look at something, you become self-aware, you self-check. That self-check is asking yourself these questions. You know, what am I thinking at the moment? What am I feeling? What is the impact that that's having on the situation around me? Is this enabling me, or is this inhibiting me? And then the last thing you need to do is take the controls and actually self-regulate. So in other words, become self-aware, then become self-regulating, and then just make sure that you actually are changing it up and really owning it. So 3 steps: self-aware, self-check, and then self-regulate.
And one of the other things Kirsten and I talked about when we were looking at this topic was actually about showing up with your limits. You know, we're all leaders in our role, whether you have it in job title or not, and we're all humans. And we also are most likely to understand what our triggers look like, but it's also really important to understand what boundaries within conversations look like. So we might be able to identify a trigger taking effect as we're working through a conversation. And sometimes it's appropriate just to let that conversation go and not deal with what's happening on the other side. And sometimes it's actually really important to say to the person or people in that conversation, actually, that's enough. It's also just as important in conversations for people to understand your boundaries. And you can do that, as Kirsten's given you in all the steps and tips that she shared. You can do that in a really respectful manner. You know, we can be constructive and we can be kind when we're saying, actually, enough's enough, and here are my limits. This is now making me really uncomfortable, and I want to step this back so that we can get this conversation back on track and back on an even keel. So it's really important to understand the limits and your boundaries during those conversations as well.
So everyone, if you've been following this, you know the drill next, and that is, here's your challenge. So your challenge for the week is to take the 4 proactive tips that are very practical, they're very proactive, that you can instill very easily into your day to actually mean that you show up emotionally in changing times in a lot stronger position. So they are: the first one, identify your triggers. Go through and look at your positive, your negative triggers, and what is that costing you, and what are the warning signals your body is giving you. The second one is then catch yourself, and actually, if you catch yourself doing something, pull yourself back. And the third one is making sure that you try out that 3-step easy process to self-awareness. So that is self-aware, self-check, and then self